Hi everyone, we're talking a little bit more about the layman's and scientific explanation of PBMT today. Let's jump straight in because we're going to explain how PBMT works in that layman's and scientific depth so that you can better appreciate and explain to your patients. Because explaining this is crucial to the understanding of your patients to ensure that they understand through consent, but so that you can answer the questions that they ask, and as well as give them that sort of peace of mind so that they can understand and accept your treatment plan as well. But sort of, I've put a little bit more depth on these slides because this is typically how I talk through with my patients. And I typically start simple and then get more involved as I go through so that we can start leading the conversation and answering any specific questions depending on their level of prior knowledge of biology, of health, and potentially what their condition is. And so initially I start to say, well, laser therapy, or what we call photobiomodulation therapy, is photo meaning light, bio meaning the body, and modulation or modulating to change what's happening there. And then I'll go into and just say, it's simply red and near infrared light. You'll see a bit of red during treatment, but typically that's just so that we know it's on, because the treatment wavelengths you can't actually see, and that's that near infrared light. And so that's what we commonly call laser. Now for some people they're happy there and they'll stop. Most people though want a little bit more information. And so you can then start saying, okay, well, light therapy, laser therapy, PBMT is like photosynthesis is for plants. We take in light and then turn that into energy for our bodies. And with that increased energy, we have more blood flow, and that creates effects including increased blood flow to heal us faster, decrease the inflammation and swelling, and most importantly, decrease your pain. But it also helps regenerate nerves. And this is the type of conversation that I'll sort of have with my patients. Depending on what they're presenting for, you can then just put a little bit of evidence and research in there just to back up what you're already saying. And for me, I sort of, often are seeing sort of tendon and skin concerns. And so I'll say, well, we can heal it up to 3 times faster. And that's what the evidence shows us. In particular, I start thinking, okay, of some fantastic Achilles research, which shows that the intervention group at 4 weeks was the same as the control group at 12 weeks. And that's a really nice way to start going, okay, well, here's what we are looking at. As we start to get slightly more advanced for those that are wanting more information, I ask them how much they want to know. Do you remember back to biology or physiology? What are you working as? Just to give me an idea of sort of the depth that you'd like to know. Some people will say, I trust your doc, no problems. Other people do want to know more. And so that's where we then start going into, okay, well, this laser, this PBMT works by having a very specific wavelength of red and near infrared light that you can't even see. It goes into the cells at a very specific frequency, which is measured in hertz, for a very specific time. And that's what I'm doing here now. Now, this is what we call the dose rate, and every condition is different based on the studies and research that have been undertaken previously. Now, this is a really nice conversation to have with people, and they'll go, oh yeah, cool, tell me more about how that works. And so you can then start to get slightly more advanced and say at a cellular level, you may remember that the mitochondria creates ATP, and it is ATP that carries chemical energy. When the red light hits the mitochondria, we increase the efficiency of how this ATP is produced. This provides more blood flow to activate a whole heap of factors and enzymes to increase blood flow, decrease inflammation. Now, for those that want to know that next level, this is where we then start to get a little bit tricky on them. And it has happened to me when we have that sort of, biologist or, scientist that comes through that goes, well, this is actually, I'm a molecular scientist by PhD. And then you go, okay, after you say bugger and scratch your head a few times, this is where you can then start to go, let me pull up some information for you and refer back to this. Because when the infrared light hits the cell and mitochondria, ATP efficiency is increased by breaking apart that nitric oxide compound, which accumulates in stressed cells. It also upregulates the nuclear factor kappa B to reduce reactive oxygen species, that ROS, which leads to oxidative stress. And that's what we're talking about, when it accumulates in that area. When these are corrected, we get the downstream effects as per this. And this is the picture that I've mentioned a few times. It's in a lot of depth, but basically this is what the research is showing. those primary effects of the absorption in the cytochrome C oxidase, going down to those secondary effects, being that nitrous oxide release. We're seeing that ROS modulation, the ATP increase, and then we're seeing other tertiary effects before we get to the quaternary effects, and then going down there, increases in neutrophils, smooth muscle cells are changed, that lymph flow is increased, mast cell in production goes up. There's so many different things on this slide. You may not be able to see it all too well on the screen here, so check the PDF document. But with the downstream effects of decreased pain, it resolves inflammation, edema, and increases tissue repair. And that's what we're here for with our PBMT. Now, that is a lot of depth and not everyone's going to want that, but I think it's important as us as practitioners to have a really good understanding of what we're looking at there. So this has been, how PBMT works. Really basic sort of overview. There is a lot of depth there, and I encourage you to go into a little bit more depth. But this will give you a bit of an understanding of how I explain it to patients, and to allow your patients to sort of accept the treatment plan that you're working with. It really does help when you're going through to other practitioners as well to know what you're talking about. Although you might sort of start getting that, the GP come back and saying, it might be more light therapy and I don't understand how this could work. You can then actually say, well, actually, this is what the research shows. It increases mast cell production, it increases, the tissue repair, and this is how it does that. And then you're going to be able to say, this is the evidence, it is evidence-backed, and get that sort of response. But it also allows you to extrapolate on different conditions that you're seeing. And in conditions that are maybe needing more of this or that, you can then start to say, okay, well, is PBMT going to work? Let's see what the problem is in this condition. Let's go back to our research and see whether that's something that has been a concern and whether it might work more effectively, so that you can start getting those new treatment protocols and new conditions treated that are appropriate and safe, of course. So really, target your patient appropriate, explain from the basics and steadily get more involved so that they're building upon that knowledge. Think of it like photosynthesis. Remember to explain it in ways that people can connect to, relate to, and understand appropriately. When I explain that to, the young, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old, I'm going to be like, it's the energy that creates plants. We're using that for humans, and leaving it at that. I might talk to the parents in a little bit more depth, but just allowing each level and each patient to really understand what we're looking at. But the advanced, it's great to know, have that reference image handy every now and then, so that you can make sure that the patient that does come in that's got a PhD in molecular science, they've got their answers as well. But today, this has been the layman's and scientific explanation of PBMT. We'll see you in the next session. Cheers.